He was one of the richest men in the country. He owned skyscrapers. He owned private jets. He owned companies that employed thousands of people. But on one rainy night, standing on a street corner, a poor girl with torn shoes and empty hands taught him something that his billions of dollars never could. This is not just a story about money. This is a story about what money can never buy. Stay with me until the end, because what this girl said to him that night changed him forever. And it might change the way you see your own life too. His name was Richard Cole. At 45 years old, Richard was the CEO of one of the largest real estate companies in the country. He had a mansion with 14 rooms, 5 cars in his garage, and a bank account with more zeros than most people could imagine. From the outside, his life looked perfect. But behind closed doors, Richard was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. He was tired of meetings that never ended, deals that never satisfied him, and a house that always felt empty, even when it was full of people. His wife had left him 3 years earlier. His only son barely called him anymore. His friends were only around when there was a business opportunity attached to the conversation. Richard had built an empire, but somewhere along the way, he had forgotten how to feel anything real. Every night, he would sit alone in his office, looking out over the city lights, asking himself one quiet question. Is this really what I worked so hard for? He didn't know it yet, but that question was about to be answered, not in a boardroom, not in a 5-star hotel, but on a wet, forgotten street corner, by a girl who owned nothing at all. It was late November. Rain had been falling all evening, turning the city streets into rivers of light and shadow. Richard was being driven home from a business dinner that had gone on far too long. He sat in the back of his car, exhausted, scrolling through emails he didn't care about, replying to messages that meant nothing. His driver stopped at a red light near an old part of the city, a part Richard rarely visited anymore. Tall buildings had turned into small, tired shops. Bright office lights had turned into flickering street lamps. That's when he saw her. A young girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, standing under a broken street lamp. Her clothes were soaked through. Her shoes were torn at the sides. She wasn't asking for money like most people would expect. She was holding a small paper bag, walking carefully from car to car, offering something to the drivers waiting at the light. When she reached Richard's car, she tapped gently on the window. His first instinct was to look away, the way he always did. He had passed thousands of people like her in his life. He had a rule: don't make eye contact, don't roll down the window, don't get involved. But something that night made him pause. Maybe it was the question he had asked himself only an hour earlier. Maybe it was simply exhaustion. Whatever it was, Richard rolled down the window. "Sir, would you like to buy one?" the girl asked, holding up the paper bag. Inside were small hand-made paper flowers, folded from old newspaper and colored with what looked like crayons. "They're $1, she said. "I made them myself." Richard looked at her for a long moment. Rain dripped from her hair onto her cheeks. She wasn't shivering as much as he expected. She stood straight, looking him directly in the eyes, not with sadness, but with quiet confidence. "Why are you out here so late?" Richard asked. "My mom is sick," the girl said simply. "I'm trying to get enough money for her medicine before the pharmacy closes." Richard reached for his wallet out of habit, the way any wealthy man might, planning to hand her a large bill and move on with his night. But the girl shook her head. "I don't want your money for nothing, sir. You have to take a flower. I made it. It's worth something." Richard paused. In his entire life, in every business deal, in every negotiation, no one had ever refused his money before. People always wanted more from him, not less. But this girl, who had almost nothing, was insisting on fairness. He took a paper flower from the bag. It was crooked, slightly torn at one edge, colored with whatever crayons she had left. But it was made with care. "How much for all of them?" Richard asked, nodding toward the bag. The girl's eyes lit up, but then, just as quickly, she hesitated. I can't sell you all of them, sir, she said. If I sell you everything at once, I won't have a reason to come back tomorrow. And I need a reason to come back tomorrow. Richard sat there in silence, stunned by a 9-year-old's wisdom. She wasn't just selling flowers. She was building something, small, but real, every single day. The light was still red. Richard, without thinking, told his driver to pull over to the side of the road. He stepped out into the rain, something he hadn't done in years without an umbrella waiting for him. What's your name? He asked. Amara, she said. Amara, where do you live? She pointed down the street, toward a narrow alley with a few small buildings, their windows patched with plastic sheets instead of glass. Richard asked if he could walk with her partway, just to talk. Amara studied him for a moment, the way children do when deciding if an adult can be trusted, and then she nodded. As they walked, she told him about her mother, who used to work as a seamstress until she became too sick to sew. She told him about her little brother, who she made sure ate dinner first, even on nights when there wasn't enough food for both of them. She told him all of this not with sadness, but with a strange kind of strength that made Richard feel something he hadn't felt in years: humility. Don't you ever get tired of this? Richard asked her. Selling flowers in the rain? Amara thought about it for a moment. Sometimes, she admitted. But I think everybody gets tired of something, sir. Rich people get tired too, don't they? Richard stopped walking. No one had ever asked him that question so directly. Not his business partners. Not his family. Not even the therapist he had seen twice and never gone back to. Yes, he said quietly. Rich people get tired too. Amara smiled, like she already knew that. My mom says money buys medicine, she said, but it doesn't buy peace. Only good choices buy peace. That night, Richard didn't just give Amara money for medicine. He asked to meet her mother. Inside their small home, he found a woman lying on a thin mattress, weak from an illness that had gone untreated for months simply because they couldn't afford proper care. The room was small, but it was clean. There were no complaints, no requests, no attempt to take advantage of the fact that a billionaire was standing in their home. Richard quietly arranged for a doctor to visit that same night. He paid for medicine, for proper treatment, and later, for the mother's full recovery. But here is the part of the story that matters most. Richard didn't just write a check and disappear, the way wealthy people often do to feel better about themselves. He kept coming back. He visited Amara's family every week. He learned their names, their struggles, their small joys. And slowly, something inside Richard began to change. He realized that his entire life, he had been chasing more money, more buildings, more deals, believing that more would eventually make him feel full. But Amara, a child with almost nothing, had something Richard had lost a long time ago: purpose, gratitude, and connection to the people around her. Richard started a foundation that year, not the kind that exists only for tax benefits or company image, but a real one, providing healthcare, education, and stable housing for families like Amara's across the city. He personally funded Amara's education, but he made sure she understood something important: this wasn't charity. It was an investment in someone who had already proven, on a rainy street corner, that she understood the value of things far better than most adults ever would. Years later, Amara would grow up to study medicine, determined to help families just like hers had once been helped. And Richard, the billionaire who once sat alone in his office every night asking himself if any of it meant anything, finally had his answer. It wasn't the buildings. It wasn't the deals. It was the moment he rolled down his car window and let a poor girl remind him what being human actually felt like. Richard often said, in the years that followed, that Amara never took anything from him. She gave him something instead, a new way of seeing the world. He used to believe that success meant being at the top, looking down. Amara taught him, without even trying, that real success means reaching down and lifting someone else up. The paper flower she sold him that night still sits framed on his office desk today, a small, crooked reminder that the most valuable things in life are rarely the most expensive ones. Sometimes, the people who seem to have the least are the ones who understand life the most. And sometimes, all it takes to change a person forever is one honest conversation in the rain. So here is what this story really teaches us. Richard had money, power, and everything the world says should make a person happy. But he was empty inside until a poor girl reminded him that kindness, honesty, and human connection are worth more than any amount of wealth. Amara had nothing, but she had dignity. She had purpose. And she had a heart big enough to change a billionaire forever. The truth is, we don't need to be rich to make a difference in someone's life. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness, a conversation, a moment of honesty, a helping hand, can change someone's entire world. So today, ask yourself, whose life could you change with just one small act of kindness? You don't need to be a billionaire to leave that kind of mark. You just need to care. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe for more real, emotional stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and remember, true wealth is measured not by what we have, but by what we give.